Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Rum. This is a podcast of two brothers from opposite ends of the spectrum. My name's Kent. I'm a rum drinker, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle. I like bourbon, tend to be a little more conservative. Join us as we explore this experiment. Can two brothers from different sides of the political spectrum have a civil conversation and celebrate our differences?
What are you drinking?
Well, I'm back on the 1792. I went to a liquor store near us, and they had a single barrel. So, small batches, they're regular, but then I've gotten the full proof, the bottled in bond, the sweet wheat, the 12-year, and now the single barrel. So I've got them all pretty much. There's two others. There's like a high rye, and there's one in port barrels, and the one in port barrels is like $1,000 a bottle. So I haven't found that one yet, but yeah, kind of fun to try them all. And unlike I really like a Weller or some really good whiskeys like that, but getting all the varieties of the Weller is about a $5,000 situation. So 1792 is a little more accessible.
What's the significance of the year 1792?
It is the year Kentucky became a state.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Never knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. It's they'll have a similar flavor profile, but it's a really tasty whiskey.
I lived many years ago, one county over from Bourbon County, Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
Which was at the time a dry county. I don't know if it still is, but there's a little
Somewhat
irony
ironic.
there.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm my stomach's a little flaky tonight. I'm gonna stick with water for my beverage of choice tonight.
Hey,
So
nice. Impressive. Well, now wait a second. You've got a leg up on me because you have full sobriety. I mean, you're not imbibing anything. So maybe you need to take some kind of alternative substance.
well, looking at news this week, we I think probably the most there are a couple things to talk about. First of all, the California fire. I mean, wow, just heart goes out to literally millions of people. I mean, it is insane the degree to which this thing has happened. I don't see that as a particularly political topic, although I noticed the Wall Street Journal, even before the embers are put out, we're approaching it like this is all the fault of the Democrats, which I thought was interesting. Wildfires in Santa Ana winds, clearly a Democrat plot.
Yeah, I mean, I got a good friend that lives in LA, and praying for him. He's about 2 miles from the Eaton fire is where his home is.
Ooh.
And last night they were supposed to be strong northeasterly winds, and then it's supposed to happen again on Tuesday. I mean, I guess I don't know that Democrat, Republican per se. I think there's a fair amount of anger because they live in the most taxed area of the country. And when, fire hydrants run out of water and there's nobody to fight a fire, I think there's obviously a lot of anger that's building, but, I'm sure there's a variety of reasons.
Totally. But that certainly might be a local failure rather than a national failure.
Well, sure.
And again, it just seems like, could we put out the flames before we start pointing fingers at people? I just thought it was tacky.
Well, I'm surprised it's not Trump's fault yet. I'm sure there's some way that it's his fault as well. So I'm sure that'll get woven in the fabric somewhere.
Well, somebody will probably find that. I do think maybe the bigger story there is about insurance. And, ultimately, I think multiple sources have said this, and I think it's probably very true. You and I and the rest of the country are going to pay for this at some level.
Yeah.
When you have this kind of catastrophic insurance losses, they got to pass the buck to somebody else. And so.
Man, I tell you, it scares the hell out of me for home insurance. Like Texas has gotten, with all the tornadoes and the weather in Texas, insurance rates have just gone and skyrocketed. Talking to people in the insurance industry, it's like, don't piss off your insurer. Because there's like a real chance, like if you lose your home insurance, like you're not getting any.
Hmm.
It's crazy how bad it's gotten, and I'm sure with California, it'd just be way worse.
There was a article not too long ago that said that in many markets, you think about real estate in California or on the East Coast and crazy cost of things, but what they're finding is that in a lot of like mid-level markets, in Texas might be probably not in this category, but when you add the cost of insurance, which is doubling in places, property taxes, which are continuing to march heavy everywhere, even the bluest of states, and things like HOA fees. In a lot of markets, those three together are more
Yeah,
than the cost of principal and interest on mortgages.
yeah. It's I mean, it's unbelievable. I just look at my tax bill or my not tax, but my insurance bill monthly, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, that's a car payment. It's crazy. Then, we're not insuring that much. I mean, compared to some of these folks, some of these people, it's a house payment.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hate to even vocalize this. I did a personal insurance audit 6 months ago or so, and just looked at all the things that I'm paying: house, car, boat, and I made some calls, and I said, "Hey, here's the deal. I'm thinking about doing something different." And I got three or four quotes from name brand insurance companies. My car insurance cut in is less than half of what it was before.
Wow.
My homeowners is about the same. Actually, the homeowners is a little bit less. And I did. The guy laughed at me. Our house is in a really safe setting. We're high enough that if our house floods, like it's the apocalypse, and it's a really safe setup. The guy laughed at me. I was saving so much money that I bought earthquake insurance on top of what, and he was like,
Wow.
"Dude, nobody buys that. It's
Yeah.
like $50 a year." And I was like, "Well, when the big one happens, I'm gonna look like a
Right.
genius." So
Well, I mean, it's like DirecTV back in the day, like, well, I think I'm gonna leave. Well, we have a promotion to cut your bill in half for a year. Funny too,
uh,
I years ago, so when Bush was in office, I was living in Texas and trying to remember the lady's name that she had a kid that served. I don't know if I forget. I assume the kid must have died in battle or something. I forget the lady's name. Cindy something. What was her name? And she used to protest, and she was doing this protest down in Crawford, where Bush has got his place. Well, I went down there, and I don't know. Somehow I got, I didn't. There weren't mega hats back then, and I didn't wear a mega hat, but I did. I must have looked to the park for the local, like the people that were protesting. So somehow I was able to kind of squeeze in with the protesters, and I wound up in a car, like on the floor of a minivan, like with 30 other people driving close to, like we were going to go right up to I wasn't. I was just curious what was going on. Like I wasn't there to protest, but they were going to take us up to the front door of like right outside of Crawford Ranch. And so you kind of guess the tone of people that are, protesting. And, there's a wide variety of opinions there. And I'm not voicing my opinions on anything, but I don't know. We got into it. I get my insurance at USAA, and there's this guy, and he starts slinging it that like USAA is like behind like the Trilateral Commission or something. Like USAA is pulling all the strings in Washington, and it just made me laugh because, they talk about the insurance companies making money. He's like, USA, now they don't broadcast this, but they have a 95% profit margin. And I'm like, if those guys have a 95% profit margin, I think you'd want to tell people that, as a public company. I'm just thinking. But anyways, I loved it. But, it does speak to, and I know we have another topic here, so I don't want to venture down the insurance thing, but it's like, people love to hate the insurance company. But at the same time, it's like insurance only works if not everybody gets money. If everybody gets money,
Right.
the thing doesn't work.
Right. Right. Well, and this is not what we wanted to talk about, but bringing it full circle to health insurance, this is the issue that we have a model in this country that we talk about health insurance. And it doesn't make any sense. It's a model that's predicated 75 years ago when nobody cost anything for healthcare except when they got cancer and needed hospitalization, and then you ran up the money. And in that case, insurance makes sense, right? You're healthy most of your life, and then you might or might not have some big expenditure. But health insurance today is just ludicrous because we try to use an insurance model for, health today is like oil changes. You
Right.
don't get insurance for oil changes. You do it. You go, you
Right.
pay, and you keep the engine from falling out of the car. And an insurance model doesn't work for that. And again, I could soapbox about the things that are wrong with our finance system for healthcare in this country, but the root of it all is the idea that we think of it as insurance. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have insurance for my electric bill. I just pay my electric. It
Yeah.
comes every month. I use electricity and I pay for the electricity that I use. Like, that's how that works. There's no such thing as insurance. Now, you might have an insurance in case something drastic happened in your electric bill one, right? You can insure rare events, but you don't insure routine costs. And that's what we're dealing with today.
Well, but I know we're not trying to go down that path, but at the same time, that's where I think the high deductible plans make sense. You're not insuring like the everyday thing. What you're insuring against is catastrophic, and that's different than everyday, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I mean, talk about getting people to adopt high deductible plans. It's like pulling teeth. We've tried this with my employer, and we're
Really,
getting a little traction now.
at least what I've seen in the corporate world, many more people go for the deductible or the high deductible than the POS plan.
Wow.
That's
Not
interesting.
been our experience.
Huh.
We've had to put a lot of money on the table to get people to go that way. And once you do, you fund their health savings account to a significant degree, they'll move. But
Right.
anyway, well, the one topic that did kind of leap out, in addition to Jimmy Carter's funeral, the
Which,
the
okay, before you get, I'm not, I feel like because I could sense the anticipation. You're like, hey, kid, you're ready to open your presents. But before you open your presents, um, I mean, I did find, I was going to text you. I don't know if you saw the interchange with Trump and Obama, and they were slinging it back and forth, and they're both like giggling. I would love to be a fly on the wall, not just those two, but all of them, like all the
yeah.
former presidents. I would love to hear just what the hell are you guys talking about?
Well, I've always loved events like this where you see them together
Yeah.
because a lot of the bad blood of the recent past goes out the window pretty quick, right? And Bill Clinton's been chummy with the others. This was the first time I've seen. Was this the first time Trump came to something like this?
Well, the last time I saw them all together was George Senior's funeral. They were all there too.
Okay. Heretofore, Trump has not really gravitated to the rest of the group very much. So it's good to see him. Of course, I think having been president one term, I think it changes a person. I think it
Yeah.
it does affect them. There's a great book about that. I don't know what I think it's called, The President's Club or something, about what this has been like in modern history of people after the White House. And actually, one of the really interesting things was that ordinarily presidents are rich people. Who knew? It just works out that way. But Harry Truman was not. And in fact, he was struggling to make ends meet in his post presidency. And arguably the best post president we've ever had was Herbert Hoover. And Hoover took the reins and said, went and lobbied in Washington and said, we got to have a pension for the president. I don't need it. You know, they went and said, look, Truman, we got to do something. It's not a good look for the former president of the United States to be, not able to pay
Institute.
his
Yeah.
bills.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, the topic that kind of bubbled up as we were prepping was Greenland, and I was going to make a bad joke because I've tried to avoid the accusing Trump of being a fascist, even though that's in the water. And whenever that we've ever bumped up against that, you've always you've pointed that there's no plans for concentration camps. Fair enough. But that's not the only defining thing of fascism. And I would point out that, if you want to hear things this way, which I wouldn't imagine you would, but the thing that was most concerning about Hitler long before the world knew about the concentration camps was that he invaded Austria and invaded Czechoslovakia and invaded Poland. And I don't know, we can talk actually, I think, about the strategic value of Greenland to the United States. I think that's a legitimate concern. But when the president-elect of the United States of America refuses to rule out military intervention to take over Greenland, that leaves some of us a little on edge.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure nobody's ever used military force in the Panama Canal Zone either.
fair, fair enough. Fair enough. Are you thinking of the other Republican that sent troops to Panama?
Yeah, I
Reagan?
was thinking Ronald Reagan and Manuel Noriega. Actually, I was reading about it. It's interesting. The treaty we have authorizes us to utilize military force. Now, I'll butcher the explanation. I'm not sitting here in front of the bylaws, but it's essentially if we feel like there's a threat, we have the authority to deploy military forces. Yeah, I don't really think that anybody's going to utilize military force in Greenland. Although I think part of the dialogue is, and I get that stylistically the way he goes about things, you disagree with, but I do think there is a military element in Greenland for sure. Not so much, I don't think we need B-52s to subdue the 54,000 citizens of Greenland, but we already have a base in Greenland. We have
Sure.
troops on the ground in Greenland. And I think from a national security standpoint, there could be more. So I don't know.
I can see, I mean, clearly, if you look at a map, you see the strategic value of Greenland. I guess one of the things that I would say that one of my worries about Trump is that he doesn't see the value in NATO. And actually, Greenland's strategic value to the United States is the kind of thing that makes NATO a good thing in my mind, right? Like you don't need to conquer it to be able to have an air base there. Um,
Well, but
so
I mean, I agree a lot with his stance toward NATO, and I would argue that there's no such thing as a NATO without the U.S. I mean, none of those
right,
countries, none of those countries stand a chance against Russia without us. We 100% are the reason there's a NATO and the reason that there's any deterrence in that region. And you're already, I think the bigger thing here, and I think the whole conversation about the Panama Canal and Greenland and even Canada is the role of China and their encroachment on the Western Hemisphere. And it is interesting to me that nobody ever really talks about that. But I mean, China is actively in Greenland trying to get national resources in Greenland. They've got a presence in the Panama Canal, and I don't think that is particularly right or left when you think about the presence of a potential enemy or a good chance of an enemy being in your hemisphere and close to your borders.
sure. Well, and again, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, the Panama Canal, you can't you can't diminish the strategic value of the Panama Canal. Although, again, I would say it's 5 years, like almost to the day, about a week from now, that I went through the Panama Canal on a trip, and the one thing that you're left with, the honestly, if I were China, I'd be looking for some influence there too, because the one that stands the most to lose by anything going wrong in the Panama Canal is China, because it's all their container ships that are going
Yeah.
back and forth.
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting thing too. Now everything's political, Kent. You'll say it's because of climate change or global warming or whatever, but that's a big topic of conversation is the change in shipping lanes with Greenland. Because
Hmm.
as there's melting in the ice cap, all of a sudden you've got another shipping lane potential globally in Greenland, which is
Yeah.
kind of
No,
fascinating.
that makes total sense to me. Again, I'm not doing the thing where I paint the brush and everything that Trump touches just is a nightmare. I do think that a more measured and serious conversation about protecting our interests rather than, well, Canada would make a nice 51st state. I mean, style
Well,
points or
and
whatever.
and I honestly think of that as well, obviously, I mean, it's a huge difference in how supporters and detractors think of him. But that is like the way he's presented these two topics is stylistically 100% him.
Hmm.
And, if you are a hater, yeah, it's a horrible way to do things. If you're somebody that supports him, you think that's an interesting approach, So just as you've said, and you're fair about, I'm not going to paint a broad brush and say everything's his fault to include every fire in California. I mean, you take a measured approach, and I hope you think I take a measured approach too. I don't, this may fail miserably, but I do think they're interesting topics of conversation, and I get that people see it differently
Well,
and how to
I
approach
think
it.
Greenland actually is the one that more, I mean, I think that's a legitimate conversation. It's a long way from Greenland to Denmark in terms of mileage and in terms of politics, and honestly, there are precedents for these things in the past that it's not insane. Uh, the U.S. Virgin Islands, I think they were Danish. I
Yeah,
think we bought them from Denmark.
we did.
It's
Yeah,
like,
I was reading about that, and they said the main reason they bought them it was a fearful of, I'm going to screw it up, but it was somebody from Europe. I don't know if it's Russia or somebody that they were fearful that maybe was it Wilson that bought them or
could be. Yeah. I think the big thing was St. Thomas was like a perfect natural harbor and a coal station for ships. And so, I mean, what you could say is that Greenland is a vestige of a time when countries had little empires all over the place. And, maybe that's an outdated thing. So, I mean, I don't think it's just,
it was Wilson. It was
was it
Wilson in
Wilson?
1917, and it was driven by concerns over German influence in the Caribbean during World War One,
Yeah.
and the
It
strategic importance of the islands near the Panama.
sounds familiar.
Now, okay, now, okay, I am
But
gonna
Canada.
listen real quick though. I'm probably gonna screw up the podcast here because you know I'm gonna admit something I shouldn't admit, but my brother is smarter than I am. I'll go ahead and admit it. He's a very well-read individual. But now, talk to me about your view of Wilson. I mean,
Ooh,
Wilson
complicated.
screwed some things up, did some things right. What's your view on Wilson?
Very complicated guy. Very complicated guy. He was a raging racist, a Southerner, kind of an unreconstructed Southerner. I mean, he really was. And all of those things I think are really hard to swallow. He used to be one of my real icons as a president. I I value, I work in higher education. I value formal education. I value that kind of discourse. He was the president of Princeton University before going into politics, and he was an academic, and those things were attractive to me. I also think that there's a bit of a tragedy to Wilson's leadership. Tried to avoid going into World War One. It became inevitable, and then when I'll get a little America firsty, when we won it for our side, and they had the Paris peace negotiations, And he was so valuable in that, so critical, and yet was humiliated by his own country's Congress wouldn't endorse the treaty. Now, maybe they knew something that the world didn't know, because ultimately it was the Treaty of Versailles that many people see as the real instigator in World War II and the thing that empowered Hitler's rage and got people spun up in Germany. So, maybe we dodged a bullet, but I've just always thought kind of a sympathetic character, not in his manifest racism, but in the guy trying to avoid going to war. You get sucked into it and you got to go to war anyway because they sink the Lusitania, yada, yada. And now we win the war and he's trying to influence a meaningful peace, doesn't really succeed all that well, and then gets it shoved in his face back home. I just think it's kind of a tragic comedy story in that way.
But don't a lot of people pin the present day challenges of the Middle East on him too? Because like in 1917, didn't they just like carve up the world over in the Middle East?
Yeah, I don't know how much that, I mean, that usually gets pointed more at, well, I actually haven't heard of trying to hang a lot of the blame for that at Wilson's feet. I think it was a function of what happened in Paris, and that really what you had there was the breakup of the British mandate. You've
Because
got,
because like all those like you look at Iraq or Iran, like they're all straight line borders. I always heard that
right.
they like sat on a map like, okay, you get this one and you get that, you know.
Yeah, it is almost, and it very much looks like they're sitting there at a table. And all of that stuff was formerly province of the Ottoman Empire, which was the biggest loser in World War or before World War One. They just, this empire just falls apart. And so Britain in particular and France picked up big, huge swaths of that territory. There's things interesting there, things like oil and but then later, it's after World War II that it really. So if you get my chronology right, Britain and France, for the most part, kind of divvy up the Middle East after World War One, and Iraq was French, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine were all British. Egypt and Britain had a deal that went way back to the Suez Canal, and but then after World War II, Britain and France are like, we're getting out of the empire business. And then that was also when the demand for a Jewish homeland in the aftermath of World War II creates the opportunity for the creation of the state of Israel in 1948. And it was handled badly. It was a mess going into that. It was handled badly when it was created in 1948, and it's like it's never been resolved. It's just been like an open wound.
Well, Kent, I'm not trying to patronize you by saying how smart you are, but it is when I hear you talking about this stuff, it's like, how the hell you've read a lot of books to know all this stuff. So it's impressive.
Well, there's a lot of social life that didn't happen. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. Um,
But anyways,
so
back to
anyway,
Canada. Back to Canada.
yeah, okay,
We want to talk
Panama
Canadian
Canal,
history? Yeah,
yeah,
okay.
Greenland, yeah. Why are we going to insult a sovereign nation north of us that's a great partner in every way? I just don't get that. Is
Yeah.
there an advantage to that?
Well, I would say I don't think Justin Trudeau was a particular ally of Trump, and it was funny because when that comment came about, they were just having dinner. I mean, Trudeau went down to Mar-a-Lago and they had a nice dinner, and Trump quipped about it and continued the joke a little bit. And what? How long since the Mar-a-Lago visit did Justin Trudeau resign as prime minister? A
I
month?
don't know.
Not long. Not
No.
long. I don't think that's a coincidence. Now, you can say whether that's good or bad, but
Really? You think Trump made it happen rather than Trudeau over 10 years alienated the population of the country that he led?
I mean, you Google it yourself. There's a lot of conjecture that that hastened to the end for sure. Because a lot of people saw it like, hey, you're not, you know, among the other problems you've got, you don't have the credibility to negotiate with Trump on the world stage. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. And I don't know that necessarily, again, it goes back to is Trump a evil mastermind, or is he a careless goofball? It's one or the other. If he is the evil mastermind and he saw that coming 6 weeks after he said that he's going to be the governor, well, then he's a genius. If he's a goofball, then it was a reckless comment, but it accomplished a purpose. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's realistic that Canada becomes part of us. Although I will say I've been spending a lot of time in Canada and talking to some of the people, and it depends on who you talk to. Some people think it'd be a great thing, but I think it'd be pretty costly for us, even if back to our healthcare insurance conversation, that might be a little costly if we went down that endeavor.
You got Wikipedia. What's the population of Canada? 50 million? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah. I'd take 50 million voters kind of oriented somewhat to the left of California and New York. Bring
yeah,
it on,
exactly.
man.
41.6. Yeah, something like that.
41.2. There's some nice places in Canada, man. Vancouver, Montreal. I'm
Yeah,
I'm all for it.
I love
Um,
Montreal is a great center, a fair amount.
uh, Other topics. What else is on your mind?
Well, and we talked about it last week. I do like Trump, the disruptor. I like that. I understand that flies against the norm, and there's challenges with that. But I got to say too, I like. I don't know. I don't know why it's a heartwarming thing, maybe in some way, to see all those presidents sitting there and
Mm,
just shooting a breeze. There's a cool thing about that. It's like everybody's got the picture of all the presidents, Reagan and Kennedy and all these guys smoking cigars and sitting around a playing cards or something like that. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Even as much as you disagree with the other side, and maybe that's why I like this podcast. It's like, through all the bullshit, people can still be friends. And I don't know. When I saw
Yeah.
Trump and Obama laughing, I'm like, I don't know what they're talking about, but who cares? I mean, it's just a couple of guys talking. I love
I
that.
I did see that. And then I saw W come up and he gave like a noogie to Barack Obama. um, but on that topic, I want to clarify a little bit because our producer mentioned to me after last week when we were talking about Trump the disruptor, and I was trying to make the counter argument and basically said, I think everything's fine. Why do we want to? And I can imagine that saying that everything's fine probably doesn't land well with, it's not great for everybody across our economy. And I don't mean to sound reckless about that.
No, I got your
But I
point.
but I guess what I want to say is that when I think about everything's fine, when I think about normalcy, I don't mean that I want everybody to continue to do exactly as they've done all along. But it really is the uh, if I had to boil down the thing about Trump that is most repugnant to me, and what you identified at Carter's funeral kind of walks that back a little bit, but I do have respect for the traditions of our country. Right or wrong, look, we're not always on the right side of things. We've made mistakes. Sometimes I think that our country's headed in the wrong direction, but I think there is a straight linear line to some really I'm probably rare among liberals that I do believe in American exceptionalism to a degree, and maybe in a different way than uh, some of the MAGA crowd would describe it. I do think America is an exceptional place, but I don't think it's exceptional just because God said, "I'll pick them," and I don't think we're exceptional just because you know, we lucked out. I think American exceptionalism has always been rooted in us imperfectly moving in the direction of doing the right thing. And we were a world leader in giving freedom, freedom to vote, freedom of speech to people. Like that's what makes us exceptional. It's the living out the values of the Bill of Rights that makes America an exception. And so I still think that's true. And that's why someone who says at the start they're going to be a disruptor of that, whether that's Trump or somebody else, I'm like, I, I'm leery of rolling the dice on disruption of something that I think has been, as a nation, and not without its faults, but on net, the best force for good as a nation for hundreds of years. We just talked about winning World War One and
Yeah,
winning World War Two.
and I think that kind of keys in the difference. It's like Trump is for freedom of speech. He's for the Bill of Rights. He's for all those things. I think the argument is that, not everybody's the same on that stuff, and disruption isn't like, I want to do away with the Bill of Rights. No, I want to make sure the Bill of Rights is still here in 20 years because people feel like things have eroded. So,
And I didn't mean to
I get where
suggest
you're
that he's
going.
not, that he's out to do away with the Bill of Rights. It's not what I'm saying. I am just saying, though, that when you take a stance like we're going to pick somebody that is a disruptor that, in general, has not, other than behaving well at Carter's funeral, has not always given off airs that he thinks that, like, I'm not going to believe in the election and I'm not going to show up to the other guy's inauguration. Like, I mean, that's the kind of disruption that does risk turning over. I hope that the disruption fixes all the bad things and makes us a stronger and better union moving forward. I'm just saying, I think the world's fragile. I think democracy is fragile. And I think we need to be a little measured in our disruption. That's what it boils down to. I mean, there's a whole lot of personal baggage. We know we've talked about that. But like the headline, the thing that I'm
Well,
willing to say is that I'm not sure that I want to roll a hand grenade into it. I'm pretty comfortable with the way the country.
yeah, I understand. And I understand where you're coming from. I just, and I'm not the presidential scholar that you are. So, I'm saying this out of place of ignorance, but I also don't think, in my heart of hearts, I don't think that it's that crazy to have these divergent viewpoints. And I think if you were standing around the constitutional convention, 200 years ago, there was probably all kinds of decorum issues and things that, somebody would have had issues with. So and it kind of goes back to my point, and just in general, that I think our country's well equipped to handle a lot of dissent in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Well, and again, decorum. One man's decorum is another's deep state, right? Like,
Well,
like this is the issue.
I hate to say it, Camp, but we did have some friends over the other night, and we watched Animal House, and there's the scene in there where they're trying the Delta House, and Niedermeyer says something about that these guys did something with the females that I remember him saying decorum would prevent mentioning it here or something like that. So anyways.
Well, I, for one, am not going to sit here and allow you to besmirch the
Bad
United
mouth.
States of America.
I love that movie, but it's funny. We had my 17-year-old nephew here, and we let him watch Animal House with us. So I don't know what that says about us, but he, maybe people don't understand the humor. I mean, I think it's a hilarious movie.
Were they not busting the same gut that
They
you were?
they weren't. Yeah, I don't get it.
Well, we'll drop a link into the show notes. I don't know. It's probably old enough. It's probably in the public domain now, right?
Yeah,
You probably
exactly.
don't have to pay to watch it. I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, to circle back to the fires, though, like,
Hmm.
what do you do about that? I mean, there's no rain in the forest. When the hell
No,
did the things go out? So
no,
what do you
and I
do?
guess so it's the Santa Ana winds, which you've read about. Incidentally, interestingly, it's a manifestation of high pressure systems in Utah and Nevada,
Hmm.
and it blows wind down, and it can be 80 or 100-mile-an-hour winds, and the ground, all of the chaparral in the hills of, when I first visited California, I was just like mesmerized by this vegetation, and you realize it's all like gasoline plants,
Yeah,
like it's just like it's like creosote bushes, like it's ready to light.
yeah. They said those eucalyptus trees exploded when the fire hit.
Yeah, they're all, they're waxy. All the plants that are there, they're waxy, oily. They're designed to thrive in arid conditions when rain, so they've got all these protective coatings, and when it goes, it just goes crazy. I've been following. You ever go to the Getty Center when you were out
Yeah,
there?
yeah, that's crazy.
Oh my gosh. And there's an article that like when they built it, they essentially have like a external fire suppression system built into the thing.
Yeah.
But wait, what do you do when a fire tornado running at 100 miles an hour comes down the hill? Like
I
having
mean,
your
it sounds
lawn
like
sprinkler on is not going to fix you when that
it sounds
happens.
like the fire hit it, right? I mean,
Did it?
it's well, I mean, it got close, but I mean, my understanding is that I mean they've got, like you said, these it's impregnable, hopefully.
Like just what I don't know is how do you this is going to keep so California fires, there's a couple of things that and this is I mean there are legitimate policy concerns and political issues. I just bristle a little bit like the Wall Street Journal, like, see, Democrats are bad because California burned. But one of the things that's happened in some of the other recent fires is that the electric company, I'm drawing a blank, but they've
PGE.
got all these lines that run through these forests, and and then and then LA's water and electrical, their own city utility, didn't shut the power to these areas when they should have probably.
Yeah.
But like, do they ever learn a lesson? Are they gonna not rebuild these places that are on like chimneys? You're in the mountains in a thing where the vegetation burns periodically at high speed. So we're going to just run the bulldozers and start pouring foundations and going right back to it. And the answer is probably yes. Like I don't know
You
how
know,
you
it's like Katrina. Hey, your house, flooded because it's 10 feet below sea level next to the ocean. Every house is rebuilt. Like
right. I'm headed to Home Depot to get some drywall because eh,
right.
you know we have had success in other in very small instances of like buying people out of floodplains and stuff. But even then, there when we lived in Cincinnati, there were neighborhoods down on the river, upstream and down, but particularly upstream of Cincinnati, like they would flood every third year, and like they tried to buy these people out, and like, no, we just love our house, and like,
Yeah.
what do you do with that?
Yeah. Well, and like back to the insurance thing. I mean, like these homes in Malibu, somebody's got a 1900 square foot home that they built, 30 years ago. The thing's worth $20 million now, and it's not really worth $20 million. The property value is $20 million, and that's what it's worth. But it's like, is that what the insurance has to cover? No, they've probably been paying a premium for $30 million. So yes, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's how do you
Well,
rectify
it's
that?
interesting because, as you say, the property value is determined by the land. And part of the deal is that the land shouldn't have houses built on it. It's beautiful. So you got that. It's pretty, but it's like not suitable for human habitation. And, I'm also, part of me's there, but for the grace of God, I don't want to speak ill of other people's housing choices because I don't want anything bad to happen to mine. Although if we get the earthquake here,
Yeah, you're
I'm
covered.
good. I'm
Well,
good.
I was following the all the celebrity homes, and Paris Hilton's house burned down, and she said, "Well, I've been told by someone that perhaps my house may have burned down." And like, has she ever been to the house in Malibu?
Right, 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 right. Yeah, I don't know.
No, but I mean,
It's
I
going to
don't
be
want to
interesting.
make light of it.
Yeah, but what a structural problem. Like, yeah, it's going to wind up being the most expensive natural disaster in history because the whole market's overpriced, but people keep moving there. Like, I
Yeah,
don't know. How do you? This is the kind of thing too where politics, as usual. Maybe I am arguing for a disruptor. Politics, as usual, is not going to get you the answer because there's going to be recriminations about what the city did and who didn't do this and oh, who did I see? George Will was. I don't know. He sounded like a like an angry boomer. It was weird, but he was like, they're going to realize when they go to get permits to rebuild those houses and they can't get permits that regulation's gone too far. And I get it. Just like you hearing yourself, right? Like people's houses are burning down. Like it's a big, like it just was a weird thing. But how do you get there? And there's no party politics that's going to fix this. I think I've said this here. My brother-in-law, many times when we've looked at some of these kinds of big problems, has said, what if rather than debating this in Congress, like we hired McKinsey to lay out the solutions that would be the smart thing to do. You get Bain Consulting to give us a report on what we ought to do with insurance in California. And the thing is that,
or Chat GPT, yeah.
well, right, but like, Rand Corporate, like there are ways to get around this, but the problem is that all of the good advice about how to deal with this, it upsets the apple cart for the wrong people.
Yeah, right.
So we just disregard it. It's not really that hard to figure out.
Yeah.
But
it's back
it requires people making sacrifices.
Back to our government efficiency conversation. There could be a really great idea, but it's going to take money from somebody and piss a bunch of people off.
You bet. Well, I guess as we wrap up, again, I hope for no more loss of life, and it's heartbreaking to see people's houses. I wish we could get into a more stable living environment with the world. And Greenland, no fires in Greenland.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe we make that like the next thing, and build a nice airport there. It would be great because
we could relocate. We could relocate the people from Malibu. Hey, the good news is we've got oceanfront property for you. Bad news is it's in Greenland.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.